Hello, everybody. It's me. um, got the lo-fi hip-hop radio in the back. Um, yeah, we're making a. This is kind of distracting. Whatever. So yeah, we're making a little tutorial video today. I'm gonna do a little lesson on draft league economy. Now you might ask, what is draft league economy? Um, yeah, actually, I'm gonna preface this by saying like a ton of people just like ask me like, oh, like you know, what am I saying? Oh yeah, they're like, oh, how do you draft? Which is kind of a broad question, but I'm here today to teach you how to make your own draft plan and you know, yeah. So this is kind of I wouldn't say my expertise, but this is definitely like the thing I'm best at when coming to draft league. Um, it's kind of hard to teach, kind of like playing and team building and stuff. That's long or short. Anyway, so yeah, let's just get started with a little lesson. So here we've got a supply and demand. I'm really teaching about economy today. We got a supply and demand chart right here. So um, yeah, basically, if you didn't take econ in high school, whatever. So this is supply line. This is the demand line. Basically, in terms of Pokemon Draft, the supply here, basically like let's take bulky water types. That's a generally good example. So, how many bulky water types are there? There's actually, compared to a lot of the other roles, there's quite a decent amount of them. So, the supply is going to be higher than normal. So it would be about like here, and then I don't know. Let's say ice types. There aren't many good ice types, so the supply would be a lot lower. It'd probably be around like here. No, no, no. It'd be around like here. And what that means is that the demand is higher and the quantity is lower, but the price is higher. Price meaning what round you have to draft them in, quantity being self-explanatory. Um, so yeah, the less there are of a certain role, then the higher you have to draft them. And this also applies to if a mon has multiple sought-after roles. This music is loud. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. All right. So yeah, it applies to if they have multiple roles, right? So I'm gonna use Excadrill. Let me get to my script. Yeah. So let's use Excadrill as an example. And uh, at first, when I first started drafting, I'm like, why is Excadrill always like a staple first round mon? Like, it's it's okay. Like, it's a good no you, but like, it's like a spinner. Are spinners really that important? But what it has, it can spin and it can sweep. That's what puts it so high. If it only had one or the other, then it would probably be lower round Mon. But since it has both super sought after and super duper limited pool, yeah, that's why it is such in high demand. Um, yeah. Okay. Um, so I'm gonna go over just a little bit. I'm gonna go over the differences between free draft and tiered draft. Um, So free draft, it's pretty much pure supply and demand. No, nothing scurry about it. Yeah, it's just supply and demand. I don't know what else to say, but in tiered's a little different because here I'm gonna go back to this. Um, so yeah, each basically every single tier has its own kind of economy basically. So Uh, so tier one, so like tier two, whatever. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I'm gonna use a little example here to explain myself. So let's use tier four. So let's say there's a tier four mon, and you really want, and he's a defogger. Let's say I don't know, Golbat. Sure. There are only so many tier 4 defoggers. Let's say there's only like four good ones. Maybe three. So that means, going back to this right here, that means that the supply is lower, therefore the demand is higher, meaning that the quantity is lower. That means that there would be a shift up in the, or shift down in the supply, and the demand would be, supply and demand equilibrium be about right here, and you'd have to pay a higher round price than you'd probably want to be. Like, so if you want a Golbat, you probably have to spend, I don't know, probably not too high, probably about 7th round if you really want it, and if you really need that roll in mind. It'd be about right here-ish. Yeah, so what's next? So yeah, and basically there is an economy. Go back here. There's an economy for pretty much every single type of roll. There is an economy for bulky, just general bulk. There's an economy for even like certain abilities, like Regenerator, which is super popular, Intimidate, which is really good. There's like economies for everything. So you just have to keep all these in mind, and you have to, when planning, you have to make sure that you are going to draft a mon in the correct round, and it's kind of tough to do that because every draft is different, and of course there are people that reach and don't always draft the most optimally. So let me present to you another variation. So here's a Sublime Demand shift. So let's use this one. This one's a good one. And my example for this one is, remember last season, I wanted to get Gliscor. Gliscor is about a probably 4th or 5th round mon. I mean, probably 4th, because I wanted to get 4th and I got sniped. But you know why I got sniped is because there was a shift in supply. And there was also a shift in demand right, supply left. So what does that mean? Since JT, not to single you out, but this is just a really good example for this economy thing. But so JT, what he did is mono flying, right? And flying is a pretty important type in draft because you need ground immunity, and ground's a really good type. And anyway, so with mono flying, that means that the supply is going to decrease and the demand is going to increase because he wants more flying types, and in turn that'll make less, like the more rounds you go, the more the shifts left and the more you'll have to prioritize flying types. Now, I didn't really recognize this. This is my fault. I should have recognized, like, oh, flying types are going, I better get a good one now before they all disappear, even if it means to reach a little bit. I probably should have gotten Gliscor 3rd round, even though in free draft it's about 4th round pick. But yeah, but that's just my opinion too. That doesn't apply for everything, and I'll explain that concept a little later. But let's just stick to this one for now. So yeah, the supply and demand for flying types, bulky flying types particularly, went super low because JT was hoarding a lot of them. And that kind of screwed up everyone's draft plans. So make sure when the draft is happening, make sure you realize, like, okay, like this certain role, let's say a person is making, or like has drafted 3 water types per se. You really should prioritize water types, and you should really be like, okay, I need to get a water type sooner rather than later, because if I wait later, I might have to get some trash, like Basculin or something. I don't know. But yeah, but then what that doesn't turn is, since this since the flying types are, the demand is higher for them, that means that other things like I'm going to use in that same draft, the two examples I had was both the Volcarona and Volcanion. Um, Both of those two went super late because people were prioritizing, getting good flying types first, and those are kind of um, and the rounds where like getting those mons would be good, they were being taken up by getting flying types instead, which is why they slipped. So I think that's a good segue into this. So the current metagame for, and this is applies for specifically free draft. It's not really a set one for tiered. It's just kind of get what you want. But generally, the metagame for free draft is round one, you get your core mon. That's the mon you're going to be building around. Yeah. I don't know, a good example for this is, I don't know, like Tapu Koko. Want to build a team around Tapu Koko. Then round two, you want to complement. What's some good Koko? I don't know. What covers Koko's weakness? Let's say it's a little reach, but so Koko's weak to ground, and you want like a ground immunity, so you want like Cress maybe. So generally, that's a little early, but if you like Cress, I'll get to that concept a little later. If you like Cress, round two is a good one, or I don't know, a ground immunity. It doesn't matter. Just a compliment. Round three, basically, this is when you complete your core three. Generally, the cores come in threes, and also generally, your core is the first 3 rounds. Of course, you can do this different if you, I don't know, just want to draft a bunch of utility and things you aren't going to be focusing on early, and then get your main components later because you want, a kind of different structure, whatever. But still, this is the current metagame of the 3 mons that you want your team to focus around. Is going to be the first 3 rounds. Now, round 4 through 7 is probably the most interesting period in the draft, and this is the one that you're going to have to really play around, because what generally happens, again, let's say I draft Cresselia round 2. It's a tiny bit of a reach, about a 1 or 2 round reach, but what that does is other rounds that are considered round 2 mons slip. They slip from round 2 to like round 4, let's say. Then this is really where you're going to be getting your value, is round 4 through 7. You really get your team's power level, you really get your team good. And this is round 4 through 7 is where the best teams really start to show out, and coaches who recognize value and recognize the holes that their team has, and they fill them as optimally as possible. This is super important, as this round, every round's important, less so 8 through 10, but it's still has some rules. But 4 through 7, I think, is really where the mons you're going to be bringing most of your weeks is going to start to form, and it's super important because a ton of value is going to come out of this round, and you can choose to ignore it, but generally I think it's smarter to recognize, okay, even if you made a plan, okay, sorry for the delay, I had an intrusion, but so yeah, oh my god, the heater. Okay, so I don't even know where I was. So rounds 4 to 7, roll fillers. I don't know. Sure. I totally forgot where I was. Let's just move on. All right. So here is another idea or another strategy. Let's use the Cress example. So let's say you really want Cress. Cress perfectly fit your team. You need a really, really bulky psychic type that can levitate, and that has a ground immunity, and it's perfect to pair with Koko. Let's say, you love it. It's great. You can It is perfectly acceptable to reach for a mon you really want and really, really are going to use in your team a lot, and that's the key. If you're going to reach for a mon, two things need to happen. You need to use them as effectively as possible, because let's say like Donphan, you really love Donphan. Well, Donphan's roles are like kind of bulky ground type and a spinner, and then niche sweeper, as Jake will say, it's a niche sweeper with rock polish, weakness policy. Um, so yeah, if you're going to draft it like second round, it's later than that. But let's say you're really going to reach for it, you have to, during the regular season, you better be using all of those roles effectively. You better be using a ton of and having the perfect plan for it, or else your team is going to suffer because of it. So reaching isn't necessarily bad, but make sure that you're going to use them on to its full potential if you are going to reach for it. And the second thing is, if you're going to reach for a mon in later rounds, you better be drafting some more value to compensate for your reach. Because what if, so let's say you reach and then you just grab the, not the most optimal mods, just keep grabbing what you want, even if they're not as good as what's around. What's going to happen is that your team is just generally going to be worse than the others. Let's use, and I know it also had to do with trades after the fact and stuff, but let's use Justin as an example. He just drafted a powerful team, and not to pick on him, but Jeff, I'm sorry. When you draft like Cradley that early, and when you draft Comfey that early, they better be effective. And if they're not, which they weren't, you're not going to be as successful as teams that really made the most out of their draft. Yeah. So, is there anything else before I wrap? Oh yeah. A thing to keep in mind is so where am I going with this? Okay, so I'm gonna use another example. So last season, I was gonna draft Rotom third round, got sniped. I decided to pick up the most similar mon I could. It's not really similar, but I just needed a semi-offensive water type for something. And Keldeo was a value at 3, I think. I think it's like early 3, I got it late 3. It's not that much value, it's as much as I could do. Keep in mind that even if you don't love Amon, it's still good to draft value, to draft that Keldeo at a value, so I can then later trade. And then later in the season, I traded it for Rotom Wash. So just keep in mind that if you're going to not be drafting value, if you're going to reach for a lot of stuff, you're not going to be able to trade it as easily. And if you are going to trade it, you're going to be trading it for, you're going to be trading your like third round for probably like a sixth round if you reach, you know. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. You can draft whatever you want. You know, you can reach however many times as you want. Just make sure, just keep in mind that if you don't draft value, you're not going to be able to trade it, and it's going to be harder for you because you're going to have to use the mons that you reach for, as well as mons that are just better, you know. So yeah, that's kind of gonna wrap up the video. So here's my thesis. Be flexible. Really scrutinize your draft plan. Be like, okay, is this optimal? And then look at the board. Look at what is still around, and kind of keep in mind mons that are slipping rounds, and keep an eye on them and then think, okay, can I sub them out for any of the mons in here? Are they better than any of the mons in here? Do they fill the same roles as the mons I have in my plan? If it's yes for any of them, you might want to grab them and then grab a substitute for, the mon that you decide to not get. And then the next thing is, of course, you can have a set plan, like I'm going to draft this first, this second, this third, whatever. I think that is good. I do that. But what you also need to do is you have to have tons and tons of backups, mons that you would be fine if you picked and you don't hate them. And they also fill the roles that you were looking for. And what happens a lot of the time is, let's say, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay, so let's say, God, this is hard. What's a good example? Let's say, like Crocodile is falling, right? Crocodile is like around 3-4 mon, maybe 5, but that's a little bit of a reach. I think it's 3 or 4. Let's say it's falling. It's like 6, right? And currently, what's this, like a mid-tier, like dark type? Like Incineroar, sure. Let's say Incineroar is in your draft plan. You might want to pass on Incineroar for now because, unless you think that type sacking is, type sacking dark types and the weaknesses that you have in dark types are covered, then it's fine to get both and just wait around for Incineroar and then get Crocodile. But let's say that you have a ton of like weaknesses like fighting, then you might want to. So you drive Crocodile because you need that dark type, but then you might want to do, like, I don't know, Delphox, like wait a couple rounds for Delphox, That's just an example. To make sure that the substitutes still, like, fill the roles that you need and you don't have any holes, or you try to have as little holes as possible. Sometimes it can work out better than you planned, and sometimes it can work out worse. It really depends. So yeah, and then my last thing is take advantage of underused mons or strategies. So I'm not going to reveal my strategy, but it's really hard to think of one. Let's say, I don't know, there's a particular strategy or like type of team that you want to build that you think is undervalued and is as powerful as the other mons in higher rounds, but they just they're just picked later for some reason. I would take advantage of those. I think it's great. Let's use this as an example. Let's say like, I don't know. Let's say like Sun, I guess. So like Torkoal is really undervalued, and let's say Torkoal is always every single time. This applies to other leagues too. Torkoal never gets drafted, and neither does Venusaur, even though they're both pretty solid mons. Draft them in the last couple rounds and kind of like make sure you leave room for them. Make sure you don't already have like superior, like a sweeping grass type. I don't know, like, and then if they get sniped, then you might have to, fill those with, the types they were trying to plan for. But I just think it's generally a good idea to always be on the lookout for either strategies or mons that are super undervalued and take advantage of them. Is really the main thing. Think outside the box and yeah, try to take advantage of of mons that are undervalued before they appreciate in value, and then you don't think they're as good as the tier that they're asking for. So yeah, that is draft economy. This video kind of ran long because it was just a lot of rambling, but a ton of people have been asking me, how you draft and stuff. So I think this is a good idea for that. Yeah, sorry for the semi-low production value, but I just kind of wanted to get this out there. Yeah, all right. See y'all next time. Peace.